Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we'll be reviewing the S.H.Figuarts Mecha Frieza from Dragon Ball Z, and one of the most defining moments of the early Android saga, which is Trunks' first appearance in the series. Now, I've always liked the Mecha Frieza design, even though it was incredibly short-lived, and I think that has to do with a lot of the asymmetry of the design, as well as the massive departure from Final Form to this, because there's so much more going on color-wise, design-wise, and I thought it was really, really cool. Again, very short-lived, and there's not a lot you can do with it, but I feel like Tamashii have put in literally everything that this figure needed to pull off all of the brief moments that Mecha Frieza was in the show. So we'll jump right into it, we won't waste any time. So taken out of the box, here is Mecha Frieza. Mecha Frieza comes with 4 faces, a completely separate body for the cut-in-half display, as well as 4 pairs of hands, and a display stand for the cut-in-half body. And that's exactly what you need. Yes, you could have done effect parts and things like that, but given the amount of paint, detail, and accessories on this figure, I think that they made a conscious choice to do only what was absolutely necessary and what was the most needed for it, which you absolutely needed to do the cut-in-half design, because if you didn't, everyone would be complaining about it. So, taken out of the box and put on a display, here is Mecha Frieza, and he looks fantastic. This is a unique sculpt, obviously, but the actual Final Form parts of Mecha Frieza are different to the original Final Form Frieza. It does make me want an actual 2.0 Final Form Frieza, because that sculpt is incredibly outdated. I did a video on that recently of all 3 of the re-releases of the 1.0 sculpt, and it looks nice enough, especially the latest release, but they are just very clearly dated. And it would be nice to have just something a little bit bulkier, a little more stable. Like this Mecha Frieza, I had no trouble standing up without using the tail as extra support, so you need just a little something, it needs an update. But anyway, this Mecha Frieza looks absolutely amazing. All the colors are great, they look perfect, the detail throughout the body is fantastic. Again, I love the asymmetry. The metallic paint they used looks fantastic. All of the purple gems look good. All the detail on the head is perfect as well. There is some scarring and detailing on the figure that could have used just a hint of shading, but generally I think the figure looks pretty flawless. They've really captured that character pretty much perfectly, and I am very happy for how this turned out. And again, one of my favorite designs that they did, even though it is incredibly short-lived. I have heard the criticism that Mecha Frieza's head is a little bit too big, or in general that Mecha Frieza looks just a little bit too big, but I think it's fine, especially when you line him up with all his other releases. He's not that much bigger than the original Final Form, and once we get the 100% Final Form, I don't think it'll matter even less. But they do all look good together. And here is a direct comparison with the Final Form, so you can sort of see how outdated that original design is. I do have the Final Form crouched just a tiny bit so the tail can support them. But color-wise, the original looks good, but the new Mecha Frieza just looks so much better. Now, posability, Mecha Frieza has got a ball joint in the head and neck. There isn't a huge amount of motion in the head, but I think it's fine. The arms can move out that far. You can slide the shoulder out, sort of like Cell and Metal Cooler, which is quite nice, so they can rotate all the way around, no problem, and move up that far. There's an upper arm swivel, bend at the elbow, and hinge at the wrist. And it's the same on the other side. It might look different, but it is the exact same posability, which I quite like. There's a ball joint in the upper chest, which allows for good side-to-side and movement, as well as a little posable gem, which is pretty consistent amongst Frieza figures. So they can arc back that far and forward that far, which is nice. They can do the splits a little bit, kick forward and back that far, which is pretty good. Bend at the knee, and a hinge at the foot, which you can also pivot a bit, which is pretty standard for Frieza as well. There's also a thigh swivel, and a ball joint in the second part of the tail, as well as a hinge at the base of the tail. The tail looks a bit weird in terms of like being a posable object, just because of how it's sculpted. Would have probably been better static or a swappable tail for a different pose entirely, but it's fine enough. It doesn't really get in the way of anything, but it doesn't really like sell me on anything either. Now, I did miss this originally when I did the posability, so I recorded it after, but Frieza actually has drop-down legs, which allows for a little bit of extra posability, which I think is very, very cool. And I think they should employ that a little bit more often on some of their figures that are known for doing high kicks and stuff like that. In terms of accessories, Frieza has 4 faces, and it's interesting because you need to swap out parts of the actual head between the faces, and I'm guessing that this is a way to cut costs, but you just swap out like 2 parts of the head every time you swap out a face. But that's cool, it's fine, doesn't really get in the way, and it's easy enough to do. But it's just an interesting choice. So Frieza comes with 4 faces, so there is the standard smirking face out of the box. There is a teeth-gritted angry face. There is a looking down smiling face, as well as a angry shouting face. And I do like the asymmetry of the eyes. They've kept Mecha Frieza fairly consistent to how they showed in the anime, which I like. And then of course we've got the split in half body, which looks really, really good. And it's just impressive that they did it, because the paintwork and detail on this is immaculate. It's effectively a statue, but like all of the detail they had to put in this was pretty nuts. Tamashii Nations have had a pretty bad track record lately of using less and less paint for every release, and this has got all of the paint in it. This and Metal Cooler, like they're really flexing, showing like, yeah, we can do it if we really try, and it really makes sense for this as a premium Bandai product. And swapping to the cut in half body is actually quite easy. You just need to pop off the legs and arms, as well as the tail. They all come off rather easily, as well as go on rather easily, but not like too easy that they'll pop off while you're posing anything. It's just that it takes a little bit of extra force and they come off nice and smooth. It's not like swapping out folded arms accessories on some figures, which are a nightmare sometimes. And then you just prop up Frieza and put them on the pedestal, and it looks really nice. You can get a little bit of posability out of it, but you're not going to really be able to get that much. It's more so just like a static statue, and to make sure that Frieza's arms are posed the right way, instead of the figure coming with an entire static statue as an accessory. But it all looks good when it's set up, and it looks even better when you pair it with the 3.0 Trunks. And this is the reissue of Trunks, so it's nice to have 2 very, very good figures posed together, and it just completes the scene so perfectly. Pretty much as soon as they announced that 3.0 Trunks, we were almost guaranteed to get Mecha Frieza, and I'm glad that they finally did it, and I'm glad we're getting the full power final form later in the year, and it's just going to be nice to have every single form of Frieza, or at least every single form of Frieza from the anime, finally available. And it's just such a good figure. You can swap out accessories from previous Friezas in this. You can put some death balls, some death beams, and stuff like that, and make this even better. And it's just such a fantastic figure. I'm really looking forward to seeing the King Cold later in the year, because he's meant to come with an actual throne, and I'm just really keen to see how they pull that off. It may be a similar case of, say, like the second form Frieza and the final form Cooler, just the big bulkier figures being some of the best they've ever done, and it will be kind of ironic having one of the best Figuarts they've ever made being an even shorter lived character than Mecha Frieza. But that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you all next time.